Welcome to Drift to Sleep. Hello, my friend. Thank you for joining me tonight. Welcome back to Drift to Sleep. If you enjoy cozy bedtime stories and gentle fairy tales, you can always support the channel by liking the video and subscribing. But for now, simply get comfortable. The story you're about to hear is called The Lantern Picnic by Willow Lake. Take a slow breath in and a slow breath out, and let's begin. At the edge of a quiet village called Meadowmere, beyond the last row of garden gates and the last stone wall covered in ivy, there was a lake known as Willow Lake. It was not a large lake. You could walk around it in an afternoon if you followed the footpath slowly and stopped only once or twice to rest. But it was a beautiful lake, a peaceful lake, the kind of lake that seemed to hold the sky carefully on its surface. In spring, tiny white flowers grew near the reeds. In summer, dragonflies flashed above the water like bits of blue glass. But in autumn, Willow Lake became especially lovely. The willow trees along the bank turned gold at the tips. The maples on the far side of the water became red and orange. The reeds grew dry and musical, and every evening, when the sun dipped low behind the hills, the lake gathered all the colors of the season and held them quietly: gold, copper, rose, soft gray, deep blue. On this particular afternoon, the air was crisp but gentle, the sort of autumn air that makes scarves feel pleasant, not necessary. A soft breeze moved through the village lanes. Leaves scraped lightly over the cobblestones. Smoke rose from chimneys in thin, pale ribbons, and somewhere near the bakery, someone had set out trays of apple buns to cool by an open window. Clara Wren walked down the lane carrying a wicker picnic basket in both hands. The basket was covered with a blue and white cloth. Inside were small sandwiches wrapped in paper, a jar of honey butter, pear cakes dusted with sugar, 2 little bottles of spiced cider, and a bundle of napkins folded neatly by her kitchen table that morning. Clara loved picnics. She loved everything about them. The planning, the packing, the simple joy of carrying warm food outdoors. The way ordinary bread and fruit seemed more special when eaten beneath trees. She liked the sound of a thermos opening, the softness of a blanket spread over grass, the little shared decisions. Should they sit in the sun or the shade? Should they eat first or walk first? Should the last piece of cake be divided into 2 pieces or 4? Clara was on her way to meet her friends. Every autumn, on the evening before the harvest moon rose full and round above Willow Lake, the people of Meadowmere held a lantern picnic. It was not a grand festival. There were no noisy parades, no bright fireworks, no rushing crowds. Only families and friends gathering by the lake with blankets, baskets, lanterns, and warm food. As twilight arrived, everyone would light small floating lanterns and set them gently on the water. Each lantern carried a peaceful wish, not an urgent wish, not the kind of wish that asked the world to change in a hurry. A quiet wish for rest, for warmth, for good dreams, for loved ones to sleep well, for the coming winter to be gentle. Clara had attended the lantern picnic every year since she was small. When she was a child, she had gone with her grandmother, who made lanterns from thin paper and willow twigs. Later, Clara went with friends. And now, though her grandmother had long since become part of Clara's softest memories, Clara still made one lantern every year with the same pattern: a round willow frame, cream paper, a painted golden moon, and tiny pressed leaves around the edge. That year, Clara had invited 3 friends to join her by the lake: Milo, who worked at the village bakery and always brought something sweet; Nessa, who kept bees and knew the names of every wild flower near the meadow; and Rowan, a gentle carpenter who could repair almost anything, including chairs, shutters, picture frames, and once, according to village gossip, a very stubborn teapot handle. They had known one another for years, not in a dramatic way, not through grand adventures, simply through village life, through borrowed ladders, shared soup, market mornings, rainy errands, letters slipped under doors, and many cups of tea. By the time Clara reached the lane that led out of Meadowmere, the afternoon light had turned honey-colored. The path sloped gently downwards through fields of dry grass. Beyond the fields, she could see the tops of the willow trees. Their long branches moved slowly in the breeze, and between them, Willow Lake glimmered. Clara adjusted the basket in her hands and smiled. It was going to be a lovely evening. The picnic place had been chosen long ago, a little patch of grass beneath the oldest willow tree on the southern shore. The tree leaned slightly over the water, as if it liked to look at its own reflection. Its branches hung in soft curtains. In summer, they made a green room. In autumn, they became golden and thin, allowing more light to pass through. Clara arrived first. She always liked arriving first. It gave her time to arrange things peacefully. She set the picnic basket down. Then she unfolded a large quilt over the grass. The quilt had been made from squares of old fabric: blue cotton, brown wool, cream linen, a piece of faded red cloth from an apron her grandmother once wore. The quilt looked like something made from many quiet days. Clara smoothed it carefully with both hands. Then she began unpacking the basket. First the sandwiches: cucumber and cream cheese, apple and cheddar, roasted squash with sage, then the pear cakes, then a small jar of honey butter, then 4 enamel cups, then a thermos of tea wrapped in a knitted sleeve. She also took out a bundle of lantern-making supplies: willow twigs soaked until they were bendable, squares of thin paper, tiny brushes, little pots of paint, pressed leaves, thread, a small bottle of glue, and 4 shallow wooden bases that Rowan had made for floating lanterns. Clara placed everything neatly on one corner of the quilt. The sight made her happy. Food on one side, lantern supplies on the other, the lake in front of her, the willow tree overhead, a breeze soft enough to move the leaves but not strong enough to trouble the paper. Soon she heard footsteps on the path. Milo arrived first, carrying a cloth bag tied with string. He was round-cheeked and cheerful, with flour always appearing somewhere on his sleeves no matter how carefully he brushed himself off. "I brought cinnamon moons," he said. Clara laughed. "Of course you did." Cinnamon moons were small round pastries filled with almond cream and shaped like little full moons. Milo made them only once a year, for the lantern picnic. He placed them carefully beside the pear cakes. Then Nessa arrived with a jar of late-season honey and a small bunch of wild asters tied in ribbon. She wore a soft green shawl and had her hair pinned with a wooden comb shaped like a leaf. "The bees were sleepy today," she said, sitting down on the quilt. "I think they know autumn is turning." Finally, Rowan came down the path carrying a basket of small lantern handles and 4 folded wooden stools, just in case the grass grew damp later. He was tall and quiet, with kind hands and a calm way of moving. "I also brought matches," he said. "Useful," said Milo. "I brought pastries but forgot matches." "That is why we invite all of you," Clara said. "Together, we become one sensible person." They all smiled. For a while, they did nothing but settle in. Milo stretched his legs. Nessa arranged the asters in an empty cider bottle. Rowan set the stools near the edge of the quilt. Clara poured tea into the enamel cups. The tea was still warm. It smelled of cinnamon, orange peel, and a little black tea. They ate slowly. The sandwiches tasted better outside, as picnic food always does. The honey butter melted softly on pieces of bread. The pear cakes were sweet and tender. The cinnamon moons had flaky edges and warm almond filling. Around them, the afternoon softened. A duck moved quietly near the reeds. A few children laughed farther down the shore as they helped their parents unfold blankets. Across the lake, someone was hanging lanterns from a row of posts. The water rippled in small silver lines. No one hurried. No one needed to. After the first round of food, Clara opened the packet of pressed leaves. Maple, oak, birch, tiny fern fronds. A few yellow willow leaves she had pressed between books earlier in the week. The friends leaned closer. It was time to make the lanterns. Lantern making was Clara's favorite part of the evening, not because she was particularly skilled at it, though she was careful, but because everyone grew quiet in the nicest way. Hands became busy, voices lowered. The picnic blanket became a small workshop beneath the willow tree. Rowan showed them how to bend the willow twigs into circles. The twigs were flexible from soaking. They curved easily beneath his hands. Clara shaped hers slowly, remembering how her grandmother used to guide her fingers. "Not too tight," her grandmother had said. "Lanterns, like people, need a little room." Clara smiled at the memory. She tied the ends with thread. Then she brushed glue along the frame and laid cream paper over it. The paper was delicate but strong. It caught the golden light beautifully. Milo painted small stars around the edge of his lantern. Nessa decorated hers with pressed flowers and a little golden honeycomb pattern. Rowan painted simple lines of trees and hills. Clara painted a round harvest moon. Then she added tiny pressed leaves around it, one by one. Maple, willow, birch, oak. The lantern looked soft and old-fashioned when it was finished, exactly the way she liked it. As they worked, more villagers gathered around the lake. Blankets appeared beneath trees, baskets opened, steam rose from mugs and bowls. Lanterns in every shape and color began to wait along the shore. Some were painted with flowers, some with stars, some with little cottages. One child had painted a fox wearing spectacles. Another had painted nothing but blue waves. The air filled with quiet conversation, the scent of cider, damp grass, cinnamon, leaves, and the faint coolness of evening arriving from the water. When the lanterns were finished, Rowan examined the wooden bases. "They should float well," he said. Milo looked suspiciously at his star-covered lantern. "Mine always leans." "That is because you decorate only one side," said Nessa. "It is the dramatic side," Milo replied. They all laughed softly. The sun had slipped lower now. A long path of light stretched across the lake. The rowboats at the little dock bumped gently against one another. Clara looked toward them. The lantern lighting would not begin until the moon rose. There was still time for a short boat ride. "Shall we?" she asked. They carried their cups and a small blanket to the dock. The boat they chose was painted pale blue, though the color had faded from years of sun and weather. Rowan helped steady it while the others stepped in. Then he untied the rope and took the oars. The boat glided away from the dock with a quiet wooden sound. Water lapped gently against its sides. The lake was calm, still enough to reflect the sky, but moving just enough to make the reflection shimmer. They rowed slowly, past reeds, past floating leaves, past the old willow tree with their picnic waiting beneath it. From the boat, the village looked even smaller and cozier. Warm lights appeared in the cottage windows. Smoke rose above the roofs. The lake gathered everything into itself: the sky, the trees, the first evening lamps, the sound of distant voices. Clara let one hand rest near the side of the boat. She did not touch the water. She simply watched the ripples spread. For a while, no one spoke, and the silence was easy. The kind of silence that belongs to good friends. The kind that does not need to be filled. Milo eventually opened the small tin he had brought from his pocket. Inside were 4 cinnamon moons. "Emergency boat pastries," he said. Nessa laughed. Rowan paused rowing long enough for each of them to take one. They ate carefully, brushing crumbs from their coats. The pastries tasted of almond, sugar, and the last warmth of the day. By the time they returned to the dock, twilight had begun. The first star appeared above the eastern hill, and the full harvest moon was preparing to rise. The lantern picnic changed when the moon appeared. It always did. During the afternoon, it was simply a gathering, a lovely one, a cozy one. But when the harvest moon rose above Willow Lake, the whole shore became quiet. Everyone seemed to feel it at once. One by one, conversations softened. Children stopped running. Older villagers turned toward the water. The moon lifted slowly over the trees, large and golden. Its reflection spread across the lake in a shimmering path. Willow leaves glowed pale gold in the moonlight. The reeds became silver at the edges, and all the lanterns waiting by the shore seemed to hold their breath. Clara carried her lantern to the water. Milo, Nessa, and Rowan followed. All around the lake, others did the same. The lanterns were lit carefully, tiny flames glowing inside paper walls, warm, protected, gentle. Clara held her lantern in both hands. The painted moon on its side glowed softly. The pressed leaves became delicate shadows. She thought about her wish. Every year she wondered what to choose. A peaceful wish, a simple wish. This year she wished for rest, not only for herself, for her friends, for the village, for every person lying awake with too many thoughts, for every tired heart, for every house with one small lamp still glowing late into the night. She whispered her wish so quietly that only the lake could hear. Then she knelt at the shore and set the lantern onto the water. It bobbed once, then steadied, then drifted outward. Milo's lantern leaned slightly. as expected, but somehow floated beautifully anyway. Nessa's flower lantern moved in a slow circle before joining the others. Rowan's tree-painted lantern glided straight toward the moon's reflection. Soon dozens of lanterns floated across Willow Lake, then hundreds. Warm light spread over the darkening water. Amber, cream, gold, soft orange. They moved slowly, carried by gentle currents and barely their wind. The lake became a sky turned upside down, stars above, lanterns below, moonlight between. Then the magic began. It was a small magic, the best kind for a sleepy autumn evening. As the lanterns drifted farther from shore, their reflections began to glow brighter than their flames. The reflections stretched and softened. They became tiny paths of light. Then, near the center of the lake, the paths joined together. A golden shape formed on the surface of the water. At first, Clara thought it was only moonlight, but as she watched, the shape became clearer. It looked like a floating garden made entirely of light, a garden with glowing bridges, little lantern trees, silver reeds, and pathways that shimmered beneath the surface. The villagers watched quietly. No one seemed surprised. Perhaps they had all seen it before. Or perhaps the magic of Willow Lake was the sort of thing people accepted gently, without needing to explain. Nessa whispered, "There it is." Clara looked at her. "You've seen it?" "My grandmother called it the Lake Lantern Garden," Nessa said. "She said it appears when enough peaceful wishes gather in one place." The glowing garden floated softly in the center of the lake. Small golden shapes moved within it, not people exactly, not fish, not birds, more like little lights tending the reflections. They moved from lantern to lantern, touching each glow and guiding it gently toward the center. Clara felt a deep calm settle inside her. The lake was not simply holding the lanterns, it was receiving them. Every quiet wish, every soft hope, every small prayer for rest and warmth. The lake gathered them kindly and turned them into light. For a long time, everyone stood on the shore and watched. No one rushed to speak. The scene did not need words. The harvest moon rose higher. The lanterns drifted slowly. The glowing garden shimmered, and Willow Lake became the gentlest place in the world. After the lanterns had floated far enough, the villagers returned to their blankets, not all at once, slowly, peacefully, as though no one wanted to break the spell. Clara and her friends walked back to the old willow tree. Their quilts still waited beneath its golden branches. The air had cooled. Rowan unfolded the small stools. Nessa wrapped her shawl more tightly around her shoulders. Milo poured the last of the cider into 4 cups. Clara lit a small lantern and placed it in the center of the quilt. Its glow warmed their faces. The picnic felt different now, quieter, even cozier. The lake beyond them still shimmered with lantern light. The moon looked huge and soft above the trees. A few villagers began humming an old harvest song, not loudly, just enough for the tune to drift through the air. Clara leaned back against the trunk of the willow. The bark felt cool behind her. A branch moved gently overhead. She could hear the water, the leaves, the murmur of voices, the occasional clink of a cup, the soft rustle of paper lanterns near the shore. Milo opened the last of the cinnamon moons. They divided them carefully. Nessa drizzled a little honey onto a piece of bread. Rowan adjusted the lantern so it would not tip in the grass. Everything felt simple and kind. Clara thought of all the years she had come to this lake, as a child holding her grandmother's hand, as a young woman with her first carefully made lantern, as a friend sitting beneath the willow tree. Every year was different, and every year the lake remained, the willows remained, the moon returned, the lanterns floated. It comforted her, not because time stood still, it did not, but because some gentle things returned in their own way. A festival, a season, a recipe, a song, a place by the water where friends could sit together without needing to say very much. Rowan eventually spoke in his quiet voice. "I think this is my favorite evening of the year." Milo nodded. "Because of my cinnamon moons." "Partly," said Rowan. Nessa smiled. "Because of the lake." "Also partly." Clara looked toward the floating lanterns. "Because it feels like the whole village is breathing slowly." Her friends were quiet for a moment. Then Rowan said, "Yes, that." They sat until the lanterns drifted farther across the water and became small golden dots. The lake lantern garden faded gently, not disappearing, just becoming less visible, as if it had sunk below the surface to keep the wishes safe until next year. The villagers began packing their baskets. Blankets were folded. Children were lifted sleepily into arms. Lantern hooks were gathered, mugs tucked away. Still, no one hurried. Even leaving felt part of the ritual. Clara shook crumbs from the quilt and folded it with Nessa. Milo tied the pastry cloth into a bundle. Rowan carried the empty cups and the lantern supplies. Before they left, Clara turned once more toward the lake. Her lantern was too far away to find now. It had joined all the others, but she imagined it somewhere near the center, still glowing, still holding her wish for rest. She felt grateful for the lake, for the moon, for her friends, for the quiet. The walk back to Meadowmere was soft and slow. The four friends followed the path through the fields. Moonlight silvered the dry grass. Their shoes brushed through fallen leaves. Behind them, Willow Lake glowed faintly between the trees. Ahead, the village windows shone warm and small. No one spoke much. They were pleasantly tired. The kind of tired that comes from fresh air, good food, and a beautiful evening. At the edge of the village, they said their good nights. Nessa turned toward the lane with the beehives, Milo toward the bakery, Rowan toward his little workshop near the square. Clara continued alone along the quiet street. She did not feel lonely. She felt full of warmth. A few lanterns still hung outside cottage doors. Their flames had burned low. The bakery window was dark except for one small lamp. Somewhere, a cat crossed the road and slipped beneath a garden gate. Clara reached her small home at the end of a lane. It was a simple cottage with blue shutters and a tiny front garden. A pot of chrysanthemums sat beside the step. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The rooms were cool at first, but familiar. She lit a lamp, hung her scarf by the door, set the empty picnic basket on the kitchen table. Then she put the kettle on, not because she needed tea, but because the sound of the kettle felt like a proper ending to a good night. While the water warmed, she opened her notebook. Every year after the lantern picnic, she wrote one line, just one, not a diary entry, not a long description, only a line to remember the feeling. This year, she wrote, The lake held the lanterns like quiet dreams. She read the sentence once, then closed the notebook. The kettle began to whisper. Clara poured a small cup of chamomile tea and carried it to the window. From there, if she looked past the roofs and trees, she could see a faint glow where Willow Lake rested under the moon. Perhaps it was only moonlight. Perhaps it was the last lanterns. Perhaps it was the hidden garden beneath the water, still keeping everyone's wishes safe. Clara smiled. Then she drank her tea slowly. Outside, the village settled into sleep. Inside, her little home grew warm. The lantern picnic was over, but the feeling of it remained. Gold on water, friends on a quilt, moonlight on willow leaves, a peaceful wish drifting into the night. And now our story has come to its quiet end. Willow Lake is still beneath the harvest moon. The lanterns are drifting gently across the water. The old willow tree is swaying softly by the shore, and the picnic quilt has been folded and carried home. Clara is resting now. Her basket is empty. Her teacup is warm, and her peaceful wish is floating somewhere beneath the moonlight. The lake lantern garden is glowing faintly below the water, keeping every gentle wish safe. A wish for rest, a wish for warmth, a wish for good dreams, a wish for the night to be kind. You do not need to walk any farther tonight. You do not need to light another lantern. You do not need to make another wish. You can simply let yourself rest. Let the lake grow still in your thoughts. Let the lanterns drift slowly away. Let the harvest moon soften above the water. Let your breathing become calm and quiet. Thank you for listening to Drift to Sleep. I'm Adele Nguyen, and I'll be back soon with more cozy sleep stories and bedtime fairy tales. For now, keep your eyes closed, let your body relax, let the night hold you gently. Sleep well. Good night.